Hello and welcome to Idle Insights. I am joined with my wife, Meagan Kenreck.
It's
You
me.
have a new character. That is you. You have a new character in Idle Champions named Widdle. A lot has happened since we talked about it.
So many Widdle puns.
Yeah, there have been a few Widdle puns. On top of this, you were in Idle Champions Presents, and some things happened. I'll confess, I watched you live and I was probably screaming. I was screaming.
I heard you
down in the living room as you turned one of the party into a dampier. Like, how did that come about? Like, why did your mind go to that place? Because it was so shocking and such a profound moment. And now one of those characters' skins in the game has changed because of what you did.
Incredible, which is incredible that Idle Champions was able to change Shaka's Ascendant skin so quickly. But I think in a moment I was just thinking on my feet.
Spoilers.
Sorry. I didn't really think at all. I mean, I did ask Shaka, I did ask B-Dave that it was okay in Discord before I decided to turn Shaka into a Dompier.
That's
I thought
a big
that was
deal. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a really big deal. And it kind of affects Rivals of Waterdeep too, right? So I wanted to make sure that was actually okay. Because me as Widdle, I was in a room made out of Wall of Force with Shaka at the time, and he was in death saves at the time.
He had failed too.
Yeah. So there was really nothing else I could do because I'm not a healer. But I am a Dompier. And B-Dave was okay with me making that decision. So yeah.
It's gotta be very weird. Not only, being in that game, and I mean, these are all our friends, but on top of this, you now have a character in Idle Champions. We are pre-recording this. You got to unlock that character today and see people react to the character. And I just heard screaming pretty much all day.
Today has been incredibly surreal. And I am so honored and so humbled to be part of the Idle Champions roster. My character Widdle is the first champion to officially use the speed tag. I know in community people have been unofficially using it. And now I believe there are a few other champions who might get to use it.
Mm-hmm.
But she is a Dompier gnome wizard, part-time Lugru. So as part of her Ascendant skin, you do get to see her Lugru form with her super cool blunderbuss that Baloth actually gifted her in one of the Heroes of the Plains episodes.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. And you won that in a competition.
Yeah, we were in a Coliseum.
Yeah, that's right. You were in his the Black Pits, but only in Ravenloft.
Yeah.
He's been franchising of late. Yeah, it's I mean, like, if you're not down with a game that has a werewolf with a giant shotgun, then I mean, I don't know what else we can do to get you interested. But it was funny seeing a lot of people's reaction, including Mars, to Widdle and the speed effect. That was pretty charming.
I so much enjoyed watching that stream today on Mars's stream on CNE Games' Twitch channel. What's the name of the stream?
Mars's Guiding Hand.
Guiding Hand. Thank you. I learned so much just by watching Mars as well as Garwar do some live play of Widdle. And I learned that if you put Widdle in the middle of the formation, that's where you get the most benefit. I also got to see them test out a few different champions. Of course, they used the entire Heroes of the Plains family, which we learned that Heroes of the Plains, there's no DPS in Heroes of the Plains champions in Idle Champions, but Penelope, if you use her as a DPS character, is actually pretty decent.
That makes sense. What is your favorite thing about Widdle? Because this came from a home game where you didn't tell me at all what was going to happen or who you were making, and you refused to. and we play one-on-one shots together, and you brought this character, and I was
Yeah,
shocked.
I do try to save some of the surprises for you since you DM everything, forever DM. Um, gosh, there's so many favorite things about Widdle that make her so enjoyable for me to play. I think mainly it was that she was a joke character. I kind of just created her as a departure from Sophia's because Sophia's was a very soft spoken, kind of, well, I wouldn't really say calculated, um,
Very,
but,
very
but certainly more
articulate,
serious.
deliberate. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sophia's was very deliberate.
Yes. And Whittle is the opposite of that.
Right.
She acts first and she thinks about the consequences later.
We recently got to do a video together about your favorite roles, and both of our favorite roles. You've had a weird couple of 3 weeks with Widdle. Can you tell us a little bit beyond turning one of the rivals of Waterdeep into a Dampier? You also had an encounter with Asmodeus, where things got kind of scrappy.
Heroes of the Plains had a really big episode where we all had to fight Asmodeus. It was a super cool apocalyptic episode, and we all brought it. We all brought our A game. So Whittle used time stop, and I think rolled 1d3. So with time stop, you get a 1d4 plus 1. So I had 4 rounds, not just 4 actions, but 4 rounds.
Yeah.
So I used one of them to actually summon a Tarask and drop it on top of Asmodeus, as one does.
Yeah.
And then I also stole his steel rod or ruby rod.
Yeah, the ruby rod. Yeah. Yeah. You rolled a really
Why did I
decent
think
sleight of
steel
hand.
rod?
Well, because most rods are not made out of rubies.
It's still funny.
And the only ruby rod I ever think of is from Fifth Element. So
Oh, yeah, that's right.
So every time I hear ruby rod, I always laugh to myself. So
I try really hard not to giggle anytime I say it.
Yeah, it's a silly thing that needs to be updated.
I'm okay with it.
It was pretty amazing to see you just kind of to have all that come together at the same time. I love Widdle because Widdle is sneaky smart. Like Whittle's chaos is on brand to the point of like when you attack Strahd in our home game, Whittle's almost too smart. Like Widdle was attacked by a vampire and assumed that the head vampire, that all vampires must be in cahoots, must all be communicating and part of the same army. Because why wouldn't you create a bloodline that was completely, like coherent and all working together for the same goal? So Widdle, because this is how Widdle thinks. Widdle thinks everyone's as smart as Widdle. And Widdle assumed that the head vampire Strahd was your nemesis. And I've always found that very charming. And you attacked him in such a specific, weird way that Strahd's a genius, but he can't anticipate gnome stuff, including your attack on Ravenloft.
I like to think that Widdle is incredibly smart. She does have a very high intelligence score. Me as a person, when I think about what to do next, I think of the most intelligent thing, and then I think of the most fun thing, and then I think of a happy medium between the two that won't kill all of my friends. And so that's where we normally land with Widdle.
And what was your first siege against Strahd?
You were running me on a one-on-one shot, and she attacked Castle Ravenloft with catapults. She actually had an entire 80s montage with, I think, the original version of your character, Rend.
Yeah.
He was a elf.
He was kind of
Shatterkai?
He was kind of a shadow sorcerer, but I mean, he parts of him ended up in Rend, but Rend has always been the kind of animated armor. No one knows quite what Rend is. You originally found Rend in a cave, and there's some timey-wimey stuff, but Rend is not only an assortment of parts, but also maybe an assortment of people as well.
When I first found Rend, he was a spirit, if you will. And then we kind of put a mech suit on him. And then he turned into a Shatterkai elf
And
without
you,
Widdle knowing. And we named him Dr. Edgelore, I think. And he helped me in a montage where we gathered a whole bunch of alchemist fire and loaded them into catapults. And 6 months later, we had a siege against Castle Ravenloft where we had also collected undead bodies. And we put the alchemist fire inside the undead bodies and then loaded them into the catapults and then threw them at Castle Ravenloft.
Yeah. Which no one could anticipate that. It is about 6 months of filling dead bodies full of alchemist fire and shooting them over into Castle Ravenloft.
So, when you have to study mechanics in D&D a little bit more, you can always improvise by doing something completely unexpected that your DM cannot prepare for.
What's the level of weirdness, would you say? Because we've had a very weird life together in terms of all of D&D. What level was today?
As far as Widdle becoming available to play in Idle Champions?
Yeah.
I mean, a 10 out of 10 weird, but in the best possible way, because again, Widdle was a character that I rolled as a joke, and now she's a playable character, and people are going to play her and have their own interpretations and have their own experiences with that character. And I think that's incredible. And I hope people have as much fun playing her as I do.
Why do you like playing D&D? Because our life is very much D&D. Why do you enjoy it?
I feel like it's totally D&D. There's a lot of reasons. Friendship, first and foremost. I've made, I would say 99% of my friends through D&D. It allows you to be really creative. And I think it's really important to have a hobby. I know that sounds really silly, but you meet so many people and you kind of have this thing to look forward to after work when you have this thing that you're really passionate about, especially if you get to actually work on that thing. And I feel really fortunate that I have actually gotten to work on D&D, and I've gotten to, work with the developers at Codename to create this character.
What is it like playing a game with your own husband as the dungeon master? Is it a nightmare?
No. I feel like it's more of a nightmare for you having to deal with me. No, I think it's the most comfortable space that I can possibly imagine, because I'm relatively new to Dungeons and Dragons. I didn't start playing until 2015 or 16. I was definitely 5e. And my first character that I ever rolled was a sorcerer, which was learning a new operating system on a new computer with a keyboard you've never seen before. For a person who's never played D&D, it was incredibly difficult. But getting to have you as my dungeon master and have you be so patient with me, and I was in a trusting space. And I think this applies to good friends that you trust, just being at a table where you know that you can make mistakes. Right. It was incredible getting to have you as my DM.
I will say it's been fun, especially the last month or so when things have really come down to the line. And people don't realize, and I think probably people assume I help in any way, and I really don't. I will come downstairs because the funniest moment was everyone on Heroes of the Plains knew they were facing off with Asmodeus, and I came downstairs, and not only were you reading recaps of previous episodes from back when it was called Heroes of the Plain, Heroes of the Veil, when it was on D&D Beyond, you were also watching videos of mine that I had done about Asmodeus. It was like watching a detective trying to figure out the 100%. Moves of a serial killer.
Have you ever seen that GIF from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia?
Yeah, that was you.
Yeah, that was me going down the Asmodeus rabbit hole.
Yeah, with your third cup of coffee.
Many more. Yeah. Many more than 3. I did a lot of research for, basically anything, but especially Asmodeus, because as we get closer to the end of the campaign, we are encountering monsters that are more powerful than anything I've ever experienced in my D&D career, if you want to call it a career. So I wanted to make sure that I was prepared for the game. Also taking care that I wasn't metagaming, but I just wanted to be prepared because I am an evocation wizard.
Yeah.
I know that one of my responsibilities in my group is to kind of guide the fight and also lay down some damage. What I ended up doing is stopping time. So
a little bit of a departure, but it was a daring move.
I feel like I'm definitely gravitating towards control, but I really do still love evocation wizards.
Why do you love speed? Because like Widdle is definitely you've talked about an amalgamation of two different characters, that popular pop characters that you and I both do this. Like Avron's very Loki now, in some ways, and but you have two core inspirations for Widdle when you were forming her.
I feel like you are Iron Man playing Loki, and I feel like I'm Tank Girl playing Quicksilver.
Right. Wow, that's okay. Yeah.
If that makes sense.
No, it does. It does. I think that makes perfect sense. It's
layered.
You
know, if you had Iron Man and Tank Girl at a table playing D&D together, that's probably what they would end up with. Quicksilver and Loki.
I gotcha. What was fun? I assume it was fun, right? You got to work with designers to make your character into a video game character. I famously was a nightmare for Chris Dupuy, and I still owe him. I don't know how many. Like, I think we got a few months left where I have to agree to anything Chris Dupuy says. But in terms of like, I am sorry. I had so many opinions about Avron. What was the experience like for you? Because they are delightful about it.
They were incredibly fun to work with, and so organized, like right up front. They helped me outline the brief for my character, which is not something I ever really thought of. So I had to kind of take all the experiences that I had in Heroes of the Plains and turn them into something that would work for a video game. And they were incredibly helpful in the entire process. And I can tell that they may have had like some experiences where they were like, hey, maybe if you could figure this out before we release the character.
I had scarred them. I had scarred them deeply.
Not saying you, but yeah, like me coming from like a graphics production career, I completely understood where they were coming from.
Mm-hmm.
Lead times are a thing, so I try to be very respectful of that. But yeah, it was super fun.
What you have a companion named Rend, like we've already kind of touched upon. What is that? Why has that always been a quirky, fun thing? I will always. It's funny how goth Widdle became really quickly, because you had an encounter with a werewolf early on in our one-on-one shots as well. That was pretty dangerous. Do you remember that encounter?
I do. His name was Nigel. We were in Barovia at a graveyard. And I was like the only one in Heroes of the Plains that didn't really trust this grave worker.
Yeah.
Who was
working at midnight.
Who was working at midnight. And so I gave him a silver coin. I think it was actually an Avron coin. Canonically.
You made sure it was silver.
Okay. Yeah. I was going to say, I don't remember if the Avron coin is silver, but I did give him a silver coin. And it eventually paid off that his hand started to burn. I was like, yes. And then he bit me because we entered combat. I was like, dang it. So I got infected with leucorism, and technically the only way you can get cured is to kill the Luguru. Unfortunately, in the game, he ran off down the side of the cliff and we never saw him again.
Yeah, and I'm always a big fan of like cost. Like I don't like how easy it is to remove curses in D&D personally. It is a point of contention for me personally. But you now are cursed in a different way.
Yeah, Yeah, I'm cursed with eternal damnation in in Ravenloft, which cured me of my lugarism. Is that a word?
With lycanthropy, certainly, but lugarism is, I mean, like,
But
you
like
can't just say
lugarism is like,
lycanthropy because you'll think, okay, you're aware of this or that. Lugaroos are like super souped up werewolves. They're like
yeah.
the toughest of werewolves. So I will accept lugaroosm.
Okay. Yeah, they're definitely a little stronger than just your typical everyday
They're
werewolf.
they're chunky boys. They're
Mhm.
tough. Yeah, they are a nightmare. For sure. I'm going to look at your character sheet, which is going to be very weird. But this is a fun thing that you and I got to work on because we both knew like how much you love being a speedster and everything else. And very quickly you realized we could kind of game the system a bit to kind of like achieve that flavor, because you when you play the evocation wizard and you sculpt a spell around things, you do it in this very Days of Future Past X-Men kind of way, right?
Mhm.
Like you don't just cast fireball, you like run over to
Yeah.
your companions and you push it out of the way.
Yeah, it's a whole sequence. You know, if you've ever seen X-Men Days of Future Past, highly recommend it if you haven't. You see Quicksilver quickly move his friends or move the bullets out of the way that are about to hit his friends. And that's pretty much what Widdle does anytime she casts Sculpt Spell, which usually happens anytime she gets to use a AoE involving fire.
Right. Which is a big part of being an evocation wizard. So you're already like, you start off with, okay, you're a gnome, you became a Dampier that gave you like 35 feet, right? As a movement, and then you
Yep.
took the mobile feat in D&D and that gave you another 10 feet, and then you took squat nimbleness that gave you another 5 feet on top of that. Then you got the boon as the god of speed, basically,
Which gave me 30 feet.
which gave you another 30 feet on top of that, and then you have boots of speed,
Which doubles it.
which allows you to do the dash action as a bonus action on top of everything else. So you right now, you have a base walking speed of
80.
if, all of that you have like 160.
Mhm.
Like when everything's firing up.
And it's really funny to watch people in streams like commenting and chat because they're like, is she a tabaxi? It's like, nope, just
No.
two feats involving speed. And also Todd gave me a boon.
Yeah, because you're tiny gnome. Yeah. What is this experience of being involved in the D&D community and being, doing live play shows, which was, I know you were really nervous about initially.
I don't even know where to start. As far as the community goes, I feel thankful. I have met so many friends through Twitter, and I've gotten to know so many people through D&D. As far as live play shows go, I will never stop being nervous about them, and I will never stop practicing for them because it humbles me to play with such great players at the table, online and offline. And it's also such a good challenge for me outside of what I do for work. It allows me to be creative and kind of weird in ways that I could never imagine.
And you've actually worked on D&D things now.
Yes.
Not everyone knows this. You've done like photography and color retouching, but recently you actually did stuff for Witchlight, for the Adventures League products. You
Yeah.
did full layout for all of that.
I got to do the layout work for the epic adaptation for Witchlight as the senior designer. And I feel like that was such a great way to get to know epic adaptations because I've never played in one. I got to admire all the artwork and all the insanely good artists that contributed to Witchlight.
What is so people have been watching you on multiple live streams now. You are still in Idol Champions Presents, causing lots of trouble. You are chaos that I cannot predict. That I'm like, it's like me watching a boxing match when I watch you play, especially if I'm not DMing, because I'm just like, what is she going to do? what do you say to anyone who's watching you play now or is inspired by your character to learn D&D as well? Because you've had this very massive journey of, in just, in a couple of years, you learn D&D, you play D&D, you start doing on live play shows, and you've done, actual design work and actual layout work for D&D. How do you encourage people to play D&D?
I don't think you have to, be totally involved in the development of the game itself. If you want to be in live play shows, do it. Don't be afraid to make mistakes and always be humble. The longer you do it and the more consistent your shows are, the larger the following. But I think it's more important to make having fun a priority with your friends.
What's your favorite moment?
You're gonna have to narrow it down. There's so many of them. And Heroes of the Plains.
Anything.
In Heroes of the Plains, I think it was how we all came together and fought Asmodeus. Because we had been playing together as a group for a long time. And it's always been really great adventures. And there's always been challenges that were thrown at us. But I feel like this time really allowed us to show us what we're made of. And I think we really came correct.
And you've had a unique experience because you and I got to play as Avon and Widdle in a B-Dave game that was usually called one-on-one shots, but he interviewed us and we got to play with him. And now you're playing with him in ICP2, Idle Champions Presents. What was that like, being in a different group with Widdle? You still had Penelope Half Pint there.
Okay. I will say that is the most chaotic, dangerous, scary game I have ever experienced in D&D. B-Dave warned us that it was going to be difficult before the game, and I never could have imagined how difficult it was going to be. I still had fun. And it was another opportunity where I got to prepare for this game, and a lot of things changed, and like a lot of it just went out the window. And I feel like that's kind of what you need to experience in order to really understand the true nature of D&D, is that you have to expect the unexpected. And B-Dave was such a good storyteller and so good at making sure that we had fun, but also throwing things at us that he knew that we could take. And even if we couldn't, we all knew that there was potential for us to rip up our character sheets, and we were okay with it. Because I don't think I was the only one that hadn't had a character that died in D&D before.
Yeah.
And I think B-Dave might be okay with chaos. So
yeah, I think
so it kind of worked out.
Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. It's always weird when you interview your spouse. Thank you everyone for watching. Have a great day.
Bye, everyone.